His pregnant wife was dying on a table 20 feet away. Her screams had just faded into a silence that was somehow worse than the screaming. But James Ashford wasn't alone in that corridor. Cassandra, the woman he had been keeping secret for 16 months, was pressed against his side in the waiting room chair, her fingers laced through his, her head tilted toward his neck. And when the surgeon pushed through those double doors with a face carved from stone, Cassandra let out a sound. Quiet, sharp, triumphant, a single breath of a laugh. She had won. The obstacle was gone. James was hers. The surgeon looked past James. Her eyes found Cassandra, found that sound, found that face, and she said 4 words, quietly, deliberately, the way you say words you have chosen like weapons. We saved them both. Cassandra's smile didn't move. The surgeon let 1 second pass. It's twins, twin girls, both alive. And in the time it took Cassandra to understand what that meant, her entire world collapsed. Before you hear what happened next, before you understand why those words, twin heirs, turn a hospital corridor into a courtroom, turned a victory into a verdict, you need to understand who these people were. Because James Ashford was not a villain in the way that word usually works. He was something more ordinary than that. He was a coward. An ordinary cowardice, sustained over enough time, in the wrong direction, causes exactly this kind of damage. James was 42 years old. Partner at a commercial law firm in the city. 3rd-generation money. Not the inherited kind, the earned kind, which made him simultaneously proud of it and uncertain of whether he deserved it. He had a jaw that photographed well, a voice that rooms responded to, the particular quality of confidence that comes from never having had to fight very hard for anything. His wife, Nadia Ashford, born Nadia Moser, 36 years old, married 7 years, was the kind of woman who made rooms better simply by being in them. Not in a performative way, in the way that certain people carry a quality of attention, genuine attention, the kind that makes you feel like you are the only person in the room they care about, and you can feel it the moment they turn it toward you. She was an architect, good enough to have her own firm by 31, disciplined enough to have built it without compromising the things she believed the building should be. Her projects had a particular quality, warmth, precision, an understanding that a space is not just structure but the life that happens inside it. She had married James because she had loved him. She had stayed married to James because she still did. All she had, for the first 4 years. The 5th year was when things began to change in the small, nearly invisible ways that don't look like anything at the time. The 6th year was when she stopped being certain. The 7th year she was pregnant, and she was managing that pregnancy alone in every way that actually mattered, and she had long since stopped asking herself whether James was a man she had believed he was. She knew the answer. She was simply deciding what to do with it. Cassandra Vale was 30 years old. She had joined James's firm 18 months ago as a senior associate. She was brilliant in a specific way that made partners notice her immediately and competitors underestimate her once. She had the kind of beauty that is less about features and more about certainty, the certainty of someone who has always known her own value and has never once questioned whether she deserved a seat at the table. She had noticed James in the 2nd week. She had made a decision in the 3rd. The affair had begun at a client dinner in week 5. It had continued, deepened, calcified into something parallel and serious over the following 16 months. James had told himself the usual things. That it wasn't what he planned. That Nadia was focused on the pregnancy. That this was separate, sealed off, that the two lives didn't touch. This is what men like James always believe. They are always wrong. The night Nadia went into labor, James was at a firm dinner. This was not unusual. Firm dinners happened. Nadia knew this. She had stopped fighting the firm dinners in year 4. What was unusual was that Cassandra was also at the firm dinner. And that James, when Nadia's name appeared on his phone at 9:52 p.m., contraction started, heading to St. Catherine's. Can you come? Had looked at the screen, looked at Cassandra across the table, and set his phone face down. He finished his dessert. He had a 2nd glass of wine. At 10:41 p.m., Nadia called again. He picked up. He said he was on his way. He said it in the voice of a man who was performing concern rather than feeling it. Cassandra watched him from across the table with the particular expression of a woman who understood exactly what she was watching and had no intention of competing with it. She didn't need to compete. She had already won. Or so she believed. James arrived at St. Catherine's private maternity wing at 11:18 p.m. Nadia had been admitted at 10:05 p.m. She had been alone for over an hour. The first person to understand the situation was a nurse named Petra. Petra had been in labor and delivery for 11 years. She had seen every possible configuration of the people who gathered outside delivery rooms. She had learned, over those 11 years, to read the geometry of waiting, who stood where, who touched whom, who watched the door and who watched their phone. James arrived at 11:18. He went into Nadia's room for 12 minutes. He came back out. He took out his phone and began to pace the corridor, the way men who are not present even when they are present always pace. Cassandra arrived at 11:31. Petra watched her walk in, watched her find James. Watched James's posture change the way a man's posture changes when the person he is actually relieved to see arrives. Cassandra sat in the chair beside him. His hand found hers. She leaned into his side, and Petra, who had charting to do, who had 3 other patients, who had every professional reason to simply look away, looked at the door to Nadia's room instead. She thought about the woman in that room, laboring, alone, calling her husband's name. She picked up her chart. She wrote down exactly what she saw. She would be glad, later, that she had, at 1:07 a.m., something changed. The monitoring equipment in Nadia's room began showing a pattern that Dr. Rena Sinha, Nadia's OB, 44 years old, a woman who had the rare combination of genuine warmth and absolute clinical ruthlessness, had been watching for. A deceleration, then a pressure reading that moved in the direction that meant the body was making decisions faster than the plan. Dr. Sinha pressed a call button. "Get me Dr. Obi. Tell him we need the OR in 8 minutes. And call the crash team." Petra was already moving. The crash team arrived in under 90 seconds. The corridor outside Nadia's room, which had been quiet at 1:07, was suddenly loud in the specific way of a medical emergency, not chaotic, not panicked, but loud with purpose, with urgency, with people moving at the exact speed that the situation required. James stood up. He looked at the double doors as the crash cart went through. His face did something. Petra, who was moving too, who did not stop moving, caught it from the corner of her eye. His face did something that was not panic. It was something more complicated than panic. Something that already had one foot in a future that hadn't happened yet. She moved faster. At 1:22 a.m., Dr. Sinha came through the door. Her face was a practice neutral that takes years and hundreds of difficult conversations to build. The face that gives away nothing until the words do it. James stepped forward. "Is she? Your wife has experienced a placental abruption," Dr. Sinha said. "We are taking her into emergency surgery right now. She is critical but stable. You need to wait here. The baby—" "We are doing everything we can," Dr. Sinha said, and went back through the doors. James stood in the corridor, and Cassandra's hand found his arm. And Petra, who had followed Dr. Sinha back through the doors, heard none of what happened next. But she had left her notes at the station. She had written down what she saw. What Petra did not hear, what no one on the medical side of those doors heard, was this. James sat back down. Cassandra leaned close. "Whatever happens," she said, "I'm here. Whatever you need." James looked at the doors. He was quiet for a moment. "The firm dinner count," he said. "Do you know if it covers?" "James." Her voice was soft. "Careful. Not now. I know," she said. "I know what you're thinking. Stop thinking it." But he wasn't thinking what she assumed. He was thinking about the Ashford estate, about his grandfather's trust documents, about the specific language that his family solicitor had explained to him 3 years ago, when Nadia first became pregnant and miscarried, and which he had filed away in the part of his mind reserved for contingencies. The language that said, in the event of live issue born to the primary marriage, 1 child, 1 heir, everything passed cleanly. He was thinking about how cleanly everything would pass. He was thinking about what came after. He did not know, could not have known, that Nadia had been thinking about the same documents for 4 months, with her own solicitor, with considerably more precision. Inside the operating room, Dr. Sinha worked. There are surgeons who are technically competent, and there are surgeons who are present, fully, completely, uselessly unable to be anywhere other than exactly where they are. Dr. Rena Sinha was the second kind. She had been the second kind for 20 years, and she had never once in that time decided it was a weakness. The placental abruption was significant. The blood loss was faster than she would have liked. She called for more units. She adjusted. She moved. At 1:47 a.m., she delivered the first baby. A girl. 3 pounds, 14 ounces. She came out fighting, which was a word Dr. Sinner always used for the ones who came out announcing themselves to the room, the ones whose first act was volume. Then Dr. Sinner reached further. She had known since week 21 that there was a second one. She had told Nadia at the 21-week scan. She had documented it meticulously in Nadia's file. She had also, because Nadia had asked her to, quietly, in the particular tone of a woman who had already thought about this very carefully, kept the second twin's existence out of any document that James had access to or had signed. This was unusual. Dr. Sinner had agreed to it for one reason, because Nadia had asked, and because Nadia had explained, and because in 20 years of medicine Dr. Sinner had learned that the people who ask quietly and explain carefully are almost always the ones who have the best reasons. She reached further. The second baby, smaller, 4 pounds, 2 ounces, positioned behind the first in a way that made her invisible on a basic scan, arrived at 1:52 a.m. Also a girl, also fighting. Dr. Sinner held her for a moment. She looked at the monitor, showing Nadia's vital signs stabilizing. She looked at the 2 nurses holding 2 babies. She looked at the door. She thought about what was waiting on the other side of it. She took a breath. She went through the door. In the corridor, James was on his feet before Dr. Sinner cleared the threshold. Cassandra stood beside him, close, a hand on his arm, in the specific position of a woman staking a claim in a room she has decided belongs to her now. Dr. Sinner registered this in the first second. She had been registering it since 11:31 p.m. Your wife, Dr. Sinner said, is alive. She came through surgery. She is in recovery and she is stable. James let out a breath. Thank God. The words were correct. The timing was approximately 1 second slower than genuine relief. Dr. Sinner had noticed timing for 20 years. And the baby? James asked. Is it? There is something I need to speak with you about, Dr. Sinner said. She gestured to the consultation room, the one at the end of the corridor. Round table, box of tissues, nothing on the walls. The room that exists for conversations that cannot happen standing up. James followed. Cassandra moved to follow. Dr. Sinner looked at her. 1 second. 2. Are you family? Cassandra's jaw was perfectly composed. I'm a very close friend of the family. You're welcome to wait here, Dr. Sinner said, and walked into the consultation room without breaking stride. Cassandra sat back down. She crossed one leg over the other. She opened her phone. Her face gave nothing away. But Petra, returning to the nursing station, watched her grip tighten on her phone case until her knuckles changed color, and noted it. In the consultation room, Dr. Sinner sat across from James Ashford and delivered the information. She began with what was stable. Your wife came through surgery. She lost significant blood, but she is receiving transfusions, and her vitals are steady. She will be unconscious for several more hours. James nodded. We delivered your daughter at 1:47 a.m. A pause. And your second daughter at 1:52 a.m. The room went quiet. James looked at her. Second daughter. You have twin girls, Dr. Sinner said. The second twin was positioned behind the first throughout the pregnancy. She appeared as a shadow on standard imaging. She has been monitored closely since week 21. James was very still. By my wife's OB. By me. Yes. Who else knew? It was not a question. Your wife, Dr. Sinner said, has been managing this pregnancy with complete awareness of its full picture. James looked at the table. Dr. Sinner watched his face. She had watched many faces receive unexpected information. She had learned that the specific quality of the reaction, what it went to first, what it skipped, what it could not quite hide, told you more about a person than almost anything else. James's face went to calculation. Not joy, not relief, not the particular loosening of a man who has just learned that 2 lives came through something dangerous. Calculation. The face of a man running numbers. She knew, he said. His voice was careful, measured, doing something specific. Your wife has been remarkably thorough in her prenatal care, Dr. Sinner said. Her voice was equally careful. James looked at his hands. He was thinking about the trust documents. He was thinking about the language, live issue born to the primary marriage, and about what the word twins meant when placed next to that language. He was thinking about his grandfather's estate, and specifically, his face shifted, barely, but Dr. Sinner caught it. He was thinking about the secondary provision, the one that almost no one in the family had ever considered relevant, the provision that used a different phrase entirely. Twin heirs. His grandfather had been specific. In the event of twin heirs born to the primary line, the secondary holdings, comprising the family estate, the original land, and 43% of the group's non-liquid assets, shall be administered independently of the primary trustee, directly by the birth mother, until the heirs reach majority. Directly by the birth mother. Not by James. Not by anyone James appointed. By Nadia, the woman he had spent 16 months quietly preparing to leave. James stood up. His face had resolved into something smooth and unreadable, which is what faces do when the thing underneath them is too large and too complex to show. "I need to make some calls," he said. "Your wife is still in recovery," Dr. Sinner said. "She will be conscious in 3 to 4 hours. When she has asked to see her daughters first." James looked at her. "Her daughters first," he repeated. "Yes." Something moved through his eyes. "Of course," he said, and walked out of the consultation room. Cassandra was on her feet the moment he came through the door. Her eyes swept his face with the practiced speed of someone who had learned to read him precisely. "What happened?" "Twins," he said. His voice was flat. She blinked. "What?" "There are 2 of them. Twin girls." The silence that followed this was a specific silence of a world rearranging itself. Cassandra stood very still. She processed. She was fast. She had always been fast, and the processing took perhaps 4 seconds. 4 seconds in which Petra, at the nursing station, watched her face move through confusion, then understanding, then something that was not the triumph of 6 minutes ago. "Twin heirs," Cassandra said, quietly, almost to herself. James looked at her. She looked back at him. "She knew," Cassandra said. "She knew. Since week 21, James said. Another silence. Cassandra sat down. Not gracefully. The way someone sits down when their legs have made a decision before their mind has finished processing. She sat down, and James looked at his phone, and Petra looked at the door to the recovery suite, and thought about the woman on the other side of it, who had known since week 21, who had been preparing since week 21, who had, apparently, been several steps ahead of everyone in this building for the better part of 5 months. Nadia Ashford regained consciousness at 5:14 a.m. Dr. Sinner was in the chair beside her bed, not standing, sitting. Nadia, in those first foggy moments of consciousness, registered this before she registered anything else. She had learned, from years of watching her own mother in hospital after her father's accident, that doctors who sit beside beds are not delivering catastrophe. Doctors who sit are decided to stay. Doctors who stand are managing their exit. Dr. Sinner was sitting. "Both of them," Nadia said. Her voice was rough, barely there, but her eyes, when they opened, were clear. "Both of them," Dr. Sinner said. "In the NICU. Stable. The smaller one is showing off." Nadia's eyes closed again for a moment. When they opened, there was something in them that was not just relief. It was resolution. The specific expression of someone who has been waiting for a particular moment to arrive, and is now watching it come. "James," she said. In the corridor, Dr. Sinner said carefully, "Not alone." "No." Nadia was quiet. "Tell me," she said. Dr. Sinner told her. Not everything. The things that were Heirs to tell. She told her about 11:31 p.m., about what Petra had noted, about the consultation room and the quality of James's face when he heard the word twins. Nadia listened without moving. When Dr. Sinner finished, Nadia looked at the ceiling for a long moment. "I want to see my daughters first," she said, "before James, before anyone." "I know," Dr. Sinner said. "Petra has already made the arrangements. And I need Lena Chen, your solicitor." "Yes." Dr. Sinner nodded. "Petra will handle it." Nadia looked at her. "You sat down," she said. "I did." "Why?" Dr. Sinner considered this. "Because a woman who comes through what you came through," she said, "deserves to receive her news from someone who plans to stay in the room. Nadia looked at her for a moment. Then she looked at the ceiling. "Thank you," she said, quietly, the word meaning more than its syllables could carry. At 7:30 a.m., Petra brought the babies down from the NICU. She had asked to do this herself. Dr. Sinner had said yes without asking why. The smaller one first. 4 pounds, 2 ounces, now 4 pounds, 5 ounces, having spent 4 hours demonstrating that she intended to remain in the world regardless of anyone's opinion about it. The larger one 3 minutes later, serene and watchful in the way that certain babies are watchful, already assessing. Petra placed the first baby in Nadia's arms, and then the second, and stepped back. Nadia looked at them, both of them, one in each arm. She did not speak for a long time. The room was quiet in the specific way that rooms are quiet when something complete is happening inside them. "You were both there," Nadia said finally, "the whole time." She looked at their faces, at their separate, particular, entirely individual faces. "The whole time," she said again, "and no one knew." She looked up at Petra. "I knew," she said, "and Dr. Sinner knew, and that was enough," Petra said. Nadia looked back at her daughters. "It was enough," she said. Lena Chen arrived at 9:15 a.m. She was 61 years old, small, precise, with the quality of someone who had spent 4 decades navigating the space between what the law said and what it was used to do. She had been Nadia's solicitor for 3 years. She had begun working on the specific matter of the Ashford estate documents in the 5th month of Nadia's pregnancy. She sat with Nadia for 2 hours. She laid out the current position the way a cartographer lays out terrain. Factually, without editorializing, with the specific compassion of someone who believes that accurate information, delivered with care, is the most useful thing you can give a person in a difficult situation. The secondary trust, Lena explained, had been triggered. The language was archaic and had been considered purely theoretical by the Ashford family's legal team for 2 generations. Harold Ashford, James's grandfather, had written it in 1961 with the assistance of a solicitor who had himself been the product of a complicated inheritance and had written provisions accordingly. Twin heirs born to the primary line, the secondary holdings, comprising the family estate, original land parcels, and 43% of non-liquid group assets, administered independently by the birth mother, directly, until the heirs' majority, directly, without James's oversight. Without the Family Trust Board of Directors. By Nadia. "We filed the activation documents on Tuesday," Lena said, "before I went into labor." "Yes, we were watching the timeline closely. I didn't want to wait." James's solicitor called my office at 8:07 this morning, Lena said. He was not pleased. Nadia almost smiled. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to read the document." "And?" "He read it." A pause. He was less pleased. James came at 11 a.m. He stood in the doorway of Nadia's suite for a moment before entering. He was carrying flowers. Real ones, from a proper florist. Stems wrapped in tissue paper. Expensive in the way that flowers from guilty men are always expensive. As though the quality of a gesture can absorb some of what the gesture is compensating for. He came in. He looked at Nadia in the bed. He looked at the 2 bassinets beside the bed. Occupied now, both of them. The girls sleeping with the absolute, magnificent indifference to everything outside themselves that newborns have. He said her name. She looked at him. "Sit down, James." He Saturday. He put the flowers on the table. He opened his mouth. "I already know," she said. He closed his mouth. "I have known for 9 months that you were seeing Cassandra Vale." Her voice was precise. Even. The voice of someone who has rehearsed not the words but the control, who has practiced being in this moment without being destroyed by it. "I have known since the week before Christmas." James said nothing. "I know she was in this hospital last night. I know she was here when I was in surgery. I know that you arrived 73 minutes after I was admitted." A pause. "I called your name. At 11:09 p.m. I asked the nurse to call you in." James looked at his hands. "I heard you," he said. The room went very quiet. "I know," Nadia said. He looked up. "I know you heard me," she said, "and I know you didn't come. And I want you to understand that I don't say that to make you feel something. I say it because you should know that I know exactly what happened, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Not for your comfort. Not anymore." His jaw moved. "Nadia, I'm not finished." He stopped. She looked at her daughters, back at him. "I have 2 daughters," she said. "They are asleep 6 feet away from you, and they do not yet know that their father is a man who heard a mother calling and chose to stay where he was. They will never hear that from me. How they learn about who you are will depend entirely on who you decide to be from this moment." He said nothing. Lena Chen filed the relevant documents on Tuesday. She said, "I suggest you speak to your solicitor about what that means. He'll explain the secondary trust provisions." Something moved through James's face. "You knew," he said, "about the trust provision. Since week 22, you've been planning this." "I've been protecting myself," Nadia said, "and my daughters, the way you should have been protecting all of us." He stood up. He was not shouting. James Ashford had never shouted in 7 years of marriage. It was a form of control, and she had once found it measured and now found it cold. But his voice had an edge. "You used the pregnancy. I used the law," Nadia said, "which was there to be used, which your grandfather wrote, which your family solicitors apparently forgot to update." A pause. "I didn't write it, James. I simply read it, more carefully than you did." He looked at her for a long moment, the specific look of a man encountering a version of his wife that he had not seen before and does not know how to categorize. She looked back. She was not afraid. This was new. Or rather, it was not new. She had simply stopped hiding it. "Sit down," she said again, "because I'm going to tell you how things are going to go. And then you're going to leave. And when you come back, if you come back, as a father, consistently, in the way that matters, we will manage that. For their sake." She looked at the bassinets. "But for mine, we are done. And you need to understand that this is not a negotiation." He sat down. She told him. Cassandra Vale left the hospital at 7:48 a.m. She had been in the waiting area for 6 hours. She had not slept. She had not eaten anything from the vending machine she had stared at for 40 minutes at 4 a.m. She got into her car in the car park. She sat for 17 minutes. She was not, she told herself, a woman who fell apart. She was a woman who recalibrated. But recalibration requires knowing what the new parameters are, and the new parameters were twins, twin girls, the secondary trust, Nadia as administrator, Nadia with independent control of 43% of the non-liquid Ashford assets and the family estate, Nadia, who had known since week 21, Nadia, who had been, and here Cassandra felt something she genuinely had not expected to feel, something that was almost respect and was certainly something she did not have a comfortable name for. Nadia, who had been playing a longer game than anyone in that building had understood. She started the car. She drove. She thought about a waiting room chair, about the quality of certainty, about how it feels when you have been absolutely certain of something and find, in the space of 4 words, that you were building on a foundation you did not know was already occupied. Twin A's. She had thought she was winning. She had been watching the wrong board. What happened next took 14 months. Not dramatically, not cleanly, the way real things happen, incrementally, with setbacks, with moments that felt like progress and moments that felt like starting over, with paperwork and phone calls, and one very long morning in a mediator's office where James's solicitor used the word reasonable 13 times and Lena Chen used it 0 times. The secondary trust was not contested successfully. James's legal team filed challenges on 3 grounds. All 3 were dismissed. The language of Harold Ashford's document was, as Lena had told Nadia in month 5, archaic but airtight. It had been written by a man who understood that the people most likely to try to circumvent it were the people it was designed to protect against. The primary marital assets were divided in the proceedings. James retained his partnership at the firm. He also retained partial custody of Iris and Rose, the names Nadia chose on the 8th day, when she had held them long enough to know which name belonged to which face. Iris, the older one, still and watchful and already seeming to consider the world carefully before engaging with it. Rose to the younger one, who had arrived 4 minutes later and had apparently decided in those 4 minutes that the world needed to be addressed at volume. James came to see them, not as often as the schedule allowed, but more often, as the months passed, than Nadia had expected. He came quietly, which was consistent with who he was. He sat with them on the floor when they were old enough to sit. He came to their first appointments. He did not perform fatherhood, which was the thing she had most feared. He simply, gradually, showed up, Whether this was enough, Nadia did not decide for him. That was between James and two small girls who would, in time, form their own precise and unsentimentally accurate view of who their father was. She trusted them to do it. Cassandra left the firm in the 3rd month. She moved to another city. She built a new position. She was talented enough that this was not difficult. She had always been talented enough that things were not difficult. Whether she thought about the hospital corridor, about the specific quality of that laugh, about the moment the surgeon's words arrived and the laugh became something she could not quite get out of her chest, Nadia did not know and did not spend time imagining. She had 2 daughters. She had enough to think about. Petra Okafor was finishing a night shift 14 months later when her phone lit up. A photograph. 2 small girls in a garden, both of them covered in what appeared to be. She leaned closer. Paint. Blue paint. Not in a contained, craft activity way. In the way that suggests someone had made a decision, and the other one had immediately agreed with it. Below the photograph, Iris decided blue. Rose said yes before Iris finished suggesting it. Dr. Sinner says you kept notes that changed everything. I think you looked at a closed door and decided the person on the other side of it mattered. Thank you for that. N. Petra looked at the photograph for a long time. 2 small paint-covered faces looking directly at the camera with the absolute unself-conscious confidence of children who have never once questioned whether they were supposed to be here. She typed back, "They look like they know exactly what they are doing." 3 dots appeared. Then, "They always have. Since week 21. Petra smiled. She set her phone down. She thought about a corridor at 11:31 p.m., about a man in a waiting room chair, about a woman who had called a name and not been answered, about what it means to look at a closed door and decide to write down what you see. She finished her notes. She clocked out. She went home. There are rooms that go quiet at the wrong moment. Corridors where a man hears his wife's voice and does not move. Waiting room chairs where someone is already measuring what they expect to inherit. But sometimes, not always, not even often, but sometimes, the woman on the other side of that door has been ready. Since week 21. Since the moment a screen showed 2 heartbeats and she sat very still for 30 seconds and said, "Both of them are healthy?" And they were. They always were. Iris and Rose Ashford, twin A's, arrive in the world through blood and emergency and the absolute relentless determination of a surgeon who does not stop moving and a mother who, for 5 months, had quietly, precisely, without drama or announcement, made certain that when they arrived, the world was already arranged to receive them. The waiting room chair is empty now. The corridor is ordinary, and 2 small girls covered in blue paint are standing in a garden, looking at the camera, already entirely certain that they belong exactly where they are. They were always there. Since week 21. Both of them. The whole time. Some things cannot hide behind other things forever. 2 heartbeats are 2 heartbeats. And the woman who knew first, knew longest, knew best, was the only one in that building who understood what it meant. If this story moved you, if you felt every second of it, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop in the comments, what was the moment that hit you hardest? Subscribe, because more stories like this are coming. And remember, the person everyone counted out was already 3 moves ahead. See you in the next one.